If I had to bet on 5 running backs to pay off in fantasy in a major way this season, it'd be the guys in this video. Because everything points to these players having a ton of upside this year, and most of them are being undervalued. These running backs can change the entire outlook of your fantasy season, and if you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetcher. I've been helping people win their fantasy leagues for 8 years, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. And we're going to start with the Patriots' second-round rookie, TreVeyon Henderson, who we've liked all off-season, the 22-year-old out of Ohio State. And I mean, if you paid attention at all to the preseason, and people will say you shouldn't pay attention to the preseason, you should if you actually care about fantasy. This is like the only time that you get to see a little bit of a sneak peek of what the first team offenses look like. Yeah, that's valuable. And if you watch the preseason, you know that in his first touch ever, TreVeyon Henderson gets a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, I don't want to play this too much because I might get a copywriter over on YouTube these days, but you could just see, finds the hole, makes one cut, and then he has the speed that you know about. 4.4 speed at the NFL Combine for his size is pretty solid. Okay, everything about TreVeyon Henderson that we love, we got to see in that play. He's a big play machine. He's great in space. He has speed. We love it. And then he would go on in that first preseason game and split the backfield for the first team usage with Rhamondre Stevenson, which is the expectation right now. But the good thing here, as you can see from my tweet, Henderson already appears to be ahead of Antonio Gibson on the depth chart. That's a veteran running back, Antonio Gibson, who was highly efficient, especially as a pass catcher last year. Henderson, which you would expect as a second-round pick, draft capital, already ahead of him and already competing kind of neck and neck with Rhamondre. So that's a great start to the preseason for Henderson, who's only going to have the rest of the preseason and just the start of the year to kind of take over that backfield even more. Now, if you're not familiar, this is not just some guy who's known for his speed and having kickoff returns on special teams. As a freshman at Ohio State, he had over 1,200 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns. When you factor in his receiving yards, or as a freshman again, so total yards, rushing and receiving, nearly 1,600 total yards in the Big Ten against legit defenses, like every single year, the linebackers from Penn State, legit dudes. And the ball security for this guy is insane. He had 0 fumbles on 667 college touches. When you have coaches like Mike Vrabel leading this team, they're going to like that. And last season, Henderson was the only running back in college football to have 1,000 rushing yards, 200 receiving yards, and over 7 yards per carry. And context matters because when you look at his metrics, let's just look at them. When you look at his stats from last year, you'll notice like, oh, he only had 1,000 yards across 16 games, right? His most games in college, and he only has 1,000 rushing yards, right? In his freshman year, he had 13 games at over 1,200. What gives? Well, last year, if you follow college football at all, he split a backfield with another second-round pick, Quinshon Judkins, who has his own legal issues right now, might not even play football this year, who knows? But in terms of the college prospect, Quinshon Judkins, he was a good player, 1,000 plus yards in 3 straight seasons in college, and TreVeyon Henderson was still able to carve out a total of 1,300 total yards with his receiving production while competing with a legit NFL back in Judkins. Now, he also has a very strong athletic profile, a 4.43 40 time that we mentioned at the top. You kind of saw that top end speed on that kickoff return, 81st percentile speed. The burst is what you're really going to see, his explosiveness, his ability to kind of just get in and out of his breaks, especially in the short areas of the field in between the tackles. 91st percentile is what we're seeing there. All of these things are why the Patriots took him 38th overall. Reports came out after the NFL draft that multiple teams were trying to trade up either at the Patriots pick or right before to take a TreVeyon Henderson, like the Chicago Bears, and the Patriots said, nah, we're going to stick here and take this stud, is what I assume they were thinking. Now, the backfield last year for New England was Antonio Gibson and Stevenson. Neither guy was consistent. Both guys dealt with injuries. Both guys had fumbling issues. Gibson was solid from a receiving perspective. Rhamondre was just kind of average everywhere. He kind of dealt with some injuries, but had the fumbling issues. You now get TreVeyon Henderson, who's coming in here, who, in my opinion, has the abilities, due to the pass protection, due to his ability to catch passes, to be a 3-down back in all situations. Not only in between the 20s, but also in the red zone and in the 2-minute offense. And when you start to unlock that 3-down back potential, it's kind of in a lot of ways like a Christian McCaffrey. Might be somewhat undersized, but he's playing in the red zone. He's playing in the 2-minute offense. He's playing on 3rd down and longs. This is where the real upside comes from at TreVeyon Henderson, whose head coach is now Mike Vrabel, a guy who loves to lean on running the ball. Every single one of Mike Vrabel's teams, in terms of where he's coached, has been top 2 in the NFL in rush attempts and rushing yards during the peak years of that. Now, of course, that's just going to really be highlighted when you're looking at it as Derrick Henry and the Titans, and Derrick Henry is what that team was built around when Ryan Tannehill and some other guys are your quarterback. So it is a little bit skewed, but overall, Mike Vrabel likes defense, likes running the ball. Now, we can look at the team changes tracker. This is a part of my fantasy blueprint. If you want to check it out, you can check it out down below at jointheblueprint.com. But this is just showing all the key offensive changes this season. A big thing that they did was to address the offensive line. Will Campbell, a top 5 pick at left tackle in the NFL draft, probably the best tackle in the draft. Morgan Moses, he's getting older, probably going to play right tackle. So they upgrade their tackle position. They get Garrett Bradbury at center. Not sure how much that really changes stuff. Jared Wilson at center in the draft as well. We'll see what they do with that position. But overall, they improved their tackle play play. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I'm not going to say it's going to make the Patriots the best offensive line in the league. They were probably a bottom 5 unit last year. The goal now is that they're just closer to middle of the pack. But if you can get closer to middle of the pack, that's going to help Drake May. He's not going to have to scramble for his life. It's going to sustain more drives. It's obviously going to help the running lanes as well for TreVeyon Henderson. And if we also look at the team changes tracker, they did bring in Stefon Diggs, who looks like the clear alpha on this team. They did bring in Kyle Williams, who is fighting for a starting job. Matt Collins, who will probably make the team a veteran receiver. So the idea here is that these combinations, plus TreVeyon Henderson in the draft, the second round pick, these combinations will make the offense better. The coaches, you get some adults in the room there as well, makes the entire offense, makes the entire team better, sustain drives, and TreVeyon Henderson out of the backfield will help you sustain drives. If we're talking about your second down and 12s, your third down and 5s, he's going to be out of the backfield as a receiver. All this to say that where he currently goes, and after some of these preseason performances and what we've been getting out of him in training camp, like he currently goes right now as a 5th round pick, late 5th, early 6th often. I think he's just going to keep climbing and definitely be a 5th round pick. The goal is that he doesn't end up getting into the 4th round by the end of the summer. So if you can get him in the 5th round where he goes right now, heck, if he falls into the 6th round of your draft, that's awesome, because this is a very rare rookie that got draft capital in round 2, is on a backfield that's relatively wide open, and he's already probably the best runner, receiver, and pass protector in this backfield. Now, the next guy that I'm betting my house on this year, if I have any opportunity in round 2 to take De'Von Achane of the Miami Dolphins, I'm definitely going to do it, because last year a lot of people were skeptical of him, including myself at times, right? This was a guy who in his rookie season ended up going out there and finishing top 5 in fantasy points per game, almost out of nowhere. And when you look at what he did in his rookie season, the dude averaged 7.8 yards per carry. This was an NFL record overall. He only had 103 carries in his rookie year and still hit 800 rushing yards, right? He had a ton of explosive plays. Now, he didn't play a full season. As you can see here, just 11 games he dealt with injury, which is part of the reason I was skeptical. A little bit of an undersized back. He left with getting banged up. When you're getting tackled by 250-pound linebackers at only 180 pounds, that's probably going to hurt you. So yeah, I was skeptical that a guy that was relying on elite efficiency behind a bad offensive line and an aging offense that kind of had their own run game problems, that he was going to continue it the next year, but he completely evolved his game and won in a totally different one. Because as you can see here, De'Von Achane's carries almost doubled, right? 200 carries, but he only had 100 more yards. Now, he wasn't inefficient. 4.5 yards per carry is still solid, but the big thing that changed for him, and the reason why once again he finished as a top 6 running back, was Achane comes out here, still scores about a dozen touchdowns. Look at this receiving production. 27 catches turns into 78, which led all NFL running backs. 197 receiving yards turned into 592, led all NFL running backs last year. So this dude went from being extremely efficient all around as a rookie to then adding in the receiving efficiency as well and getting a lot of design targets last year. That's impressive. And then when you take a closer look at what he ended up doing overall, I mean, it's insane. Sure, he didn't crack 1,000 rushing yards, but who cares when you're having nearly 600 receiving yards? In total last year, this guy basically went out there and put up 1,500 total yards, 78 receptions, 12 touchdowns, one of the best seasons we've seen for a running back in terms of all-around play from your efficiency as a runner, as a receiver, and touchdown over probably the last 3 to 5 seasons. He's actually probably had like 2 of those seasons from his rookie year, right? With historic rushing efficiency. The dude's been explosive in so many different ways when it comes to half PPR and PPR formats for fantasy. And of course, you've probably heard it by now, but when Tua Tagovailoa was in the lineup last year for the Miami Dolphins, you saw De'Von Achane be the RB1 in fantasy, averaging 22.6 points per game, more than what Saquon and Bijan and those guys averaged last year. And to take it one step further now, in 2 seasons, in 22 games, so across 2 seasons that Tua has been out there and healthy, these 22 games are where Tua is in, according to RotoViz's splits tool, De'Von Achane averages over 20 points per game. He's averaging 5 targets per game, and between his receiving and rushing yards, the dude's averaging basically 100 total yards per game. That's like double the amount of fantasy points or triple the amount of fantasy points he's been averaging when Tua is out of the lineup. So obviously we need Tua to stay healthy this year. This is all assuming that he is, since he's entering the season healthy right now, and just in 2023, despite having concussion issues, he played all 17 games. And in the preseason, in case you were like worried for any reason that the team drafted like a rookie running back and Jalen Wright's still on the roster, you don't have to be worried. De'Von Achane operated as the clear RB1. Because as you can see right here from Colin McIntyre, he says, it was quite the half of the Miami Dolphins running back room. De'Von Achane took the first 4 carries of the game. He started and then he was basically done for the day. He got 8 yards on a penalty that was brought back, 5 yards, 6 yards, 11 yards. That is the efficiency of De'Von Achane. The guy went out there, if you include this carry that got brought back by penalty, and is basically averaging 7 to 8 yards per carry on his 4 touches. He then basically sits down. Jalen Wright goes in. Later on, Ollie Gordon has a nice second half as well, the rookie running back out there. So just in general, the offense looked good. Again, small sample of De'Von Achane having 4 carries to start this game, but he's still the clear-cut starter. starter, which should have been obvious, but in case some people were just like questioning or had a lot of love for Jalen Wright. Now, in terms of the team changes tracker, it is important to call out that Raheem Mostert's no longer here. Just 2 years ago, this guy had like 20 touchdowns and was a legitimate threat to taking touches last year away from Devon Achane before battling some injuries. So now he's gone. He's going to leave behind a lot of opportunities, 85 carries, 23 targets. But the big one is Jonnu Smith right here. The tight end was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to leave behind 111 targets. And a lot of those targets were design targets. Last year, Jonnu ranked top 20 in the NFL in design targets, and so did Devon Achane. So if Jonnu's gone, maybe more design targets for Achane, which gives him a safer receiving floor. Not going to say he leads the NFL in running back receptions again, but maybe it's basically like a shoe-in to get 50 or 60, and we'll take that. In a backfield that looks like there's no competition right now. Like, I like the talents of Ollie Gordon and Jalen Wright, but when you compare them to what is the talent of a healthy Devon Achane, especially when he showed what he could do as a receiver last year, both after the catch and total production, it's not even close. Devon Achane's a better pass catcher than Jalen Wright. He's more explosive. He's probably faster overall. The only thing Jalen Wright has on him is basically just size, and we've already seen, and the goal here is that they're hopefully not going to be taking Devon Achane off the field. The first preseason game, we saw this a little bit, but I think it was just kind of, they took Devon Achane out of the game, really. There were some concerns like, oh, are they going to take Achane off the field in the red zone? They might at some points, yes, like he's a smaller back, so that's definitely not out of the question, but we're, as of right now, not seeing any major signs of that. I do want to call out the offensive line, which is right here, because, I mean, people do worry about this offensive line. Last year, they were bottom 2 in stuff rate and EPA. That's efficiency overall, expected points added, so a very bad offensive line. But despite that, and you can see it right here, Devon Achane ranked number 5 in stuffed runs last year. 24% of his carries were stuffed. Now, of course, part of that is because of the vision of the running back, and a lot of that has to do with having a bottom 3 offensive line in the league last year, but he still thrived. He still finished as a top 6 running back in fantasy. Part of the offensive line being bad led to more checkdown targets for him with a non-mobile quarterback in Tua. And I'm not going to sit here and say this team improved their offensive line this offseason. No, not really. They've kind of just, Mike McDaniel, coming from the Kyle Shanahan system, just says, we'll allow motions and getting the ball out quick with Tua to make up for a bad offensive line. They seem to be leaning on that. We'll see if it helps this year. It really hasn't in the past, although it's not been super detrimental. So when I look at it right now, Devon Achane at 14th overall, this is why I really like if you have the 6th pick in your fantasy draft and you end up landing like maybe Bijan Falls, or you take a Lamb, or you take a Christian McCaffrey, which I'm not against, and then it comes back around and you have the ability to take a Devon Achane in round 2, that feels really good. Like if you're starting off with CeeDee Lamb, who might lead the NFL in targets and even fantasy points this year at the wide receiver position, and then you come back around and you get Devon Achane, who has all the ability in the world, if he stays healthy, to lead the running back position and overall fantasy points per game, that feels like a really good start to drafts. In my opinion, you're getting 2 first-round picks, even though Achane's going in round 2. Now, if you want to see exactly where I have Devon Achane and the rest of my top 50 players ranked overall this year, you can check it out with the link in the description below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. It's completely free. Head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That will take you to this page where you just enter your email, and I'll send you a few minutes later that top 50 overall rankings. It'll be tiered. It'll show you the best and worst picks in every round highlighted in green and red. Just make sure to check your spam and promotional folders. Sometimes it falls in there for people, is what we found. But if you are a serious fantasy player and you want to take it a step further and get my full top 250 rankings for your entire draft to make sure you're set, all my other drafting tools and my in-season tools from draft day to championship week, that's exactly why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in their leagues. You could learn more about the Blueprint link down below. It'll take you to this page, or you can go to jointheblueprint.com. That is jointheblueprint.com, just to learn about everything that you will be getting in the Blueprint and a little bit more about the origin of it. And you can see these reviews from people right here of just everybody saying how they enjoyed it last year. Just kind of a little peek behind the curtain. Over 85% of people, nearly 90% of people right now, so 9 out of 10 people who signed up last year and used the Blueprint are back this year, which if 9 out of 10 people are coming back and they're saying it was good last year, good enough to come back this year, it's probably a pretty good product. So if you want to get into the Blueprint, you can check it out. There are limited spots available. We just had to open up a couple of more spots for people to get in at jointheblueprint.com, or the link in the description below. It'll help you schmack around your friends this year, and they'll start to say, how the heck did this guy get so good at fantasy overnight? Alrighty, the next guy we got to talk about is Jordan Mason, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. Now the 26-year-old running back is on the Minnesota Vikings, and his 2024 stat line, it's not going to do him justice, because you look at it, 9.6 fantasy points per game, just 3 touchdowns. Oh my God, he finished 33rd overall in fantasy points per game. That's not great, but whenever this guy got a top 10 workload, right, like he got his 15 to 16 plus touches per game, he produced like a top 10 fantasy back. Because in 7 games where Mason saw at least 50% of the snaps, he averaged 14.5 fantasy points per game, 19 carries per game, and 106 rushing yards per game. That's not only elite volume, that's elite production. And I mean, his efficiency was also top 10 everywhere. Top 10 in terms of true yards per carry, top 10 in yards per touch when you factor in some of the receptions he had. Basically top 10 in broken tackle rate, his juke rate. Explosive play rating, top 5 overall. Breakaway runs of 10 plus yards, top 10 as well. Everywhere that you look at, this guy ranked top 10 in basically everything that you can find last year. Pretty crazy that his explosive play rate was 4th. I mean, he's up there with guys like Bucky Irving, Devon Achane, Saquon Barkley. Not the type of player that you think about like Jordan Mason to be that type of explosive player. That's what he was with the 49ers last year. Despite them having a banged up offense, banged up offensive line, he was still productive. And when he got at least 1 yard, so he got 1 yard untouched, he would then average 8.6 yards per carry, which was number 2 in the NFL. And now he's actually going to be going to probably a better offensive line with the Vikings, who upgraded theirs this offseason. And Minnesota didn't trade Mason just to like sit him. They traded for him, and then they gave him a $10.5 million contract to go out there and be the 1A, 1B is what they're calling it with Aaron Jones. There's some reports that this will be close to a 50-50 backfield, which kind of makes sense when you look at it. Like, Aaron Jones is going to be 31 years old, as you can see right here on Player Profiler. This December, he turns 31 in December. Now, he has been effective. We just saw him last year stay relatively healthy. He left like 3 or 4 games early with injuries, but he never missed time overall for like a complete start. But this is still an older running back who's just, based on his size, based on his age, probably not going to get a lot of the short yardage and goal line work and red zone work. That's where we're going to see Mason come in. Sure, Aaron Jones is the better pass catching running back, but again, older running back, approaching 31 years old. That age 30 and age 32 for running backs is where we see a cliff. That's where Jones is right now. Now, I mentioned the 1A, 1B situation because that's what Kevin O'Connell has said this offseason when they acquired Mason. He said Aaron Jones is at his best when he can keep himself fresh. We can keep him truly as that 1A because we've got a 1B with him now, and that is Jordan Mason. Then after this, their offensive coordinator came out and verified that, yeah, Jordan Mason is going to be basically our goal line and red zone back. After that, we got reports as recent as a couple of weeks ago that the backfield is basically being seen right now by the coaches as a 50-50 split. Now, that probably means 50% of the snaps, not necessarily 50% of the touches. But if you're going to tell me that Mason's going to get those high value for fantasy snaps inside the red zone or goal line, I like that a lot, especially because like Aaron Jones goes in round 5 or 6 and Jordan Mason goes in like round 9 or 10. Now, I did discuss that this offseason, the Vikings improved their offensive line. They're basically setting up this offense to be as good as possible for JJ McCarthy to get dropped into and feel comfortable. And in the offseason, not only did they get Jordan Mason in the trade, they get Will Fries, a guard from the Colts, awesome pick. Ryan Kelly, a center from the Colts, wasn't great last year. We'll see what happens. Probably the worst piece on this offensive line. Then they go out there and they get Donovan Jackson, a first-round guard. They also have Christian Darrisaw coming back from injury. We know how good their tackles already are on Minnesota. I mean, this is probably, in my opinion right now on paper, I have this way in the blueprint. I have all the handcuffs in fantasy ranked. I have all the offensive lines ranked. A top 10 unit, borderline top 5, like a tier 1 unit is what we're looking at. 4 quality starters, and hopefully Ryan Kelly can do something decent. Now, in the first preseason game, Jordan Mason went out there. Aaron Jones did not play in this game, but he did start with the starters. Mason, he had 4 carries, 20 yards, average 5 yards per carry. Just continued to be the efficient Jordan Mason that we're used to at this time since the start of last year. Again, a small sample here, but it's good to see like there's no like Ty Chandler concern here. It's not like Ty Chandler's coming in and splitting the backfield with Jordan Mason as the RB2. No, based on everything the coaches have said, based on the preseason usage we've seen so far, it's 1A Aaron Jones, 1B Jordan Mason. And because of that, it's hard for me to ignore Jordan Mason. Right now is the 94th overall pick, often going in round 9 of fantasy drafts at this point. It's hard to ignore the upside. Like, you're going to tell me that this guy's probably going to see 10 to 12 touches a game just on average, even with Aaron Jones in there, behind a good offensive line and a good offense. Going to see some of the red zone usage. So week in and week out, you're getting like maybe a dozen touches. And then if Aaron Jones, who again is turning 31, has had a lot of soft tissue injuries in the past, if he misses time, now Jordan Mason is back to being San Francisco Jordan Mason with maybe 20 touches a game. So you don't want to sleep on Jordan Mason, and you don't want to sleep on this next player. But before we get there, hit the subscribe button. My goal is to get to 200,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That would mean the world to me, honestly. The more people subscribe, the more people that get to see this content. That's kind of how this works. So just double check to hit the subscribe button. It goes a really long way to allowing me to put out even more and better content for you. Now, you're probably not sleeping on this guy because I don't know how you could. We're talking about him nonstop in all our content across different platforms. But Amarion Hampton, the Chargers' first-round rookie running back, everything's looking good right now for him. This is a guy at one point you can get in the 5th round of fantasy drafts, maybe even the 6th round, right when he was drafted and people were concerned about Najee. Now he's going into the 3rd round of fantasy drafts, and that's still a steal. We'll get into all the recent stuff that makes it really exciting, but let's just look at the stuff coming out of college as to why he's a first-round running back, right? Arguably the best running back. Obviously, Genty in this draft class is like the best that we've seen since Saquon Barkley, but one of the best running backs we've seen the last 5 years is Hampton. Back-to-back seasons of 1,500 rushing yards in college. You look at his receiving production, oh yeah, he could do that too. 38 catches, nearly 400 receiving yards, an impressive 11% target share. If you're at like 7% in college as a running back, that's good. Above 10% is elite. So this guy is basically a borderline elite pass catching running back who's an unreal, like a Nick Chubb level, Kenneth Walker level, just pure runner of the football. And oh yeah, he comes with a great size at 220 pounds and can run a 4.46 40 time, 94th percentile speed, 91st percentile burst. Those are nerd stats from Player Profiler that basically just tell you since he's gone to the combine, or running backs that have ever attended the combine, he's basically a top 10% running back athlete. And he's not 200 pounds. He's not 205 205 or 210. He's NFL prototypical. If you could build this guy in a lab, 220 pounds rocked up. And just to kind of put an emphasis on how impressive his stats were in terms of the testing, there's only been 2 running backs, according to Ryan Heat's database, only 2 running backs since 2015 that have tested this highly in terms of athletic testing. Number 1 was Saquon Barkley, who got like a perfect score. Number 2 was Omarion Hampton. Now, of course, there's been running backs who have come out of the NFL draft, and whether due to injury or just due to their agents saying, hey, you shouldn't run the 40 time, you shouldn't do those cone drills. That's why they're not getting a full score. But out of the guys who have done it, Saquon and Omarion Hampton, 2 best ever. Now, in terms of what he's dealing with here, he's dealing with a backfield that last year, despite like not having the most efficient running backs, they still get handed off the ball top half of the league. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards last year were seeing a ton, like 300 plus opportunities was what these guys combined for last year. We're talking about J.K. Dobbins, who outside of like the first 2 weeks of the season wasn't efficient, and Gus Edwards, who definitely wasn't efficient, combined for 331 touches. Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, yeah, they like to run the ball a lot, even if they don't have good running backs, and now they have one. Now, they also did bring in some other pieces, right? They brought in Najee Harris, which of course has been like the talk of the town the whole offseason about Najee Harris and if he's going to be competing in this backfield. But more recently, of course, since July 4th, so the past, 5-6 weeks, Najee Harris at this point, it's a little bit concerning. Najee Harris, as of recently, as we can see in this tweet right here, and look, this guy's account, Dov Kleiman or whatever, I think he sold this account, obviously just an engagement baiter, but I just want to look at this point right here. Like, don't follow this guy for the most part, but I just want to look at this right here. He still couldn't open his eye, and this was like a month after sustaining the injury. And based on, again, I'm not a doctor, based on the stuff that I've seen from Twitter from people who are eye doctors, they said if this injury was not a major injury, the eye would have probably healed in about 1 to 2 weeks. It's now been like 5 to 6 weeks, and the dude can't open his eye fully, which means that this is pretty severe, like severe enough to the point where there's a risk of losing his eye. And look, obviously we hope that this guy gets better. This is fantasy football. We're not hoping that the guy loses his eye, but this is the reality that we're in right now. A guy in Najee Harris who has been extremely durable in the NFL, has never missed a game in his 4 seasons, has gone for over 1,000 rushing yards every year, but he's also just basically giving you average production, 4 yards, 3.8, 4.1 yards per carry, not an elite receiver by any means, not going to break off a ton of explosive plays by any means, and that's what this Chargers offense wants to rely on. They want to rely on explosive plays being generated, not from Keenan Allen, that's not going to happen, from Ladd McConkey and a running back, that's Omarion Hampton, not Najee Harris. Now, one concern we do have is Rashawn Slater, who is just an absolute beast. Thankfully, he just got his extension. Former first-round pick, a tackle in Rashawn Slater, ends up getting injured in camp. He's going to miss the entire season on this offensive line. Before this injury, I would have told you that, yeah, the Chargers offensive line with 3 former first-round picks on it, that's a top 10 unit in the league. I'm not going to say because of the Rashawn Slater injury that they're going to drop to like a bottom 5 or bottom 10 unit, but now they go from top 10, maybe top 5 to like middle of the pack, which can definitely be a concern. There's no doubt about that. I think it should actually come into play when you're drafting in the 2nd or 3rd round of your draft, and maybe a tiebreaker between some other guys can be like this Rashawn Slater injury, but we shouldn't overweight it more than that and drop like Omarion Hampton a round or 2. Especially because if anything, maybe it leads to, like I showed you earlier with the receiving stats out of college for Hampton, maybe it leads to a little bit worse offensive line play where Justin Herbert has to scramble or check it down more, and we know Hampton can do something with that. If you're going to tell me that Omarion Hampton can be put into this offense and potentially see in his rookie season 300 plus touches with 50 or 60 of those being receptions in any format, especially half PPR and PPR, that's going to smash. So yeah, Omarion Hampton is currently going, as of this recording, as the 37th overall player in fantasy drafts. So your 12-team formats, he's right at that 3rd or 4th round pick turn. I would say in about 2 or 3 weeks that he's probably going to be going up here. It's going to be my guess that he's going in this range, like 27 or 28 overall. The decisions you'll have to start to make are Omarion Hampton or Tyreek Hill, Omarion Hampton or JSN. By the way, I'm taking Omarion Hampton over both of those guys. Omarion Hampton or Breece Hall over James Cook. I'm taking him over all these guys. I already have him in our rankings, and you can see it in the top 50 overall rankings. Pretty damn high in my top 30 players. I'm taking this guy wherever I can in round 3. Now, before we get into this next guy that you have to be targeting early in your drafts, I have to point out just how valuable the zero RB strategy can be, especially on PPR formats like a DraftKings Best Ball. Like, that's where a player like Omarion Hampton, who we just discussed in depth, he actually starts to come into play a little bit, because Omarion Hampton right now on DraftKings Best Ball, he's currently going in the 3rd round as a top 30 overall player, right? So he's already in the 3rd round on that platform, and he's technically still in the 4th round across season-long leagues. And look, this is the perfect type when it comes to zero RB. Now, if you're not familiar, zero RB means you get one workhorse running back early. Typically, it means round 1 or 2 of your drafts, but in a situation like this that's very unique, you can get Omarion Hampton on platforms like DraftKings Best Ball in round 3 as your zero RB back. And then you basically just take like one running back in your first 5 or 6 picks and you lean on that guy and you build across the other positions, elite quarterback, maybe some wide receivers. And that's something I would definitely consider doing with Omarion Hampton in round 3, because you can start off your draft. If you're taking him in round 3, if we go to the DraftKings Best Ball ADP right now and we scroll all the way up here, let's just say you're in round 1, you end up landing like a Justin Jefferson with pick 5 or 6. You come back around in round 2 and you get a Drake London. So you have 2 wide receivers who might get 150 targets each this year. And then you go into round 3 where there shouldn't be these elite running backs and you get Omarion Hampton with 300 plus touches. That's a great start to your DraftKings and PPR format leagues. Now, I've teamed up with DraftKings and they have an awesome offer right now. Draft one, get one. Just enter the $20 $15 million best ball contest and you'll score another ticket to play free for a share of $15 million, but make sure you sign up using promo code SAL. Now, if you're not familiar, DraftKings Best Ball is a fantasy format where you draft your team once, there's no waivers, no trades, and no setting your lineups. And honestly, that's what makes it so much fun in my opinion. It's the best part of fantasy. You just get to draft your team and then watch it ride all year long. All right, so now let's get into this next guy that you have to be drafting if you have the opportunity in round 1 in Bijan Robinson. And look, I get it. In some leagues, Bijan Robinson, like Adam Schefter took him in the ESPN league, number 1 overall, and that's completely okay. If you've seen our top 24 overall players video, you know that I have him as a tier 1 player, meaning he could be a first round pick for you, and that's fine. But oftentimes, Bijan Robinson does fall to pick 3, 4, sometimes pick 5 or 6 in your drafts. And if that's the case, this guy's a major, and I mean a major value in fantasy drafts, a dude who finished last year 20 points per game, number 3 overall. When you look at the production that he was putting up, it's what we hoped for in his rookie year. We got it in year 2 when Arthur Smith was finally gone as the offensive coordinator. 1,400 rushing yards. Between his rushing and receiving yards, the dude put up one of the quietest, like 1,900 yard seasons with 15 touchdowns, 61 receptions, checked every single box. Rushing efficiency, receptions, finding the end zone with touchdowns. We loved it all. And I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, he's an obvious pick, Sal. Yeah, of course he's an obvious pick. He's a first round pick, but this is a guy that often falls to pick 4, 5, or 6, and you should not allow that to happen. I'd be willing to bet it all on Bijan this year producing, assuming he stays healthy, by the way. Which so far he has in his NFL career. He's played every single game besides that one migraine game. Even though he suited up, it was frustrating for fantasy managers. As you can see right here, though, over the final 12 games last season, Bijan Robinson hit a different level. 22.8 fantasy points per game, led every single running back during that stretch. And between his 23 receiving yards and 97 rushing yards per game, this guy was averaging last year 120 yards per game. Let me say that again. 120 total yards per game. The final 12 games of the season was just an elite producer and monster. And just to add on to how good he was over those final 12 weeks, Bijan was 2nd in carries, 3rd in rushing yards, and 2nd in rushing touchdowns during this time. And then to end the season in 3 games when Michael Penix took over as his quarterback, of course a small sample, but this is all we have to go off of, you can see he hit another level, 26.8 fantasy points per game. The guy ended up going out there last season between his receiving and rushing yards in those 3 games, averaging over 120 yards per game still. He was a monster. He was the RB1 in fantasy during this stretch. It was against bad defenses, games that went into overtime, right? So like there's a little bit of a skew to this, but it just shows you he just got better as the year went on and despite having a quarterback change. And now we're talking about Bijan Robinson entering year 2 and maybe the best environment of his career, because we just saw what he did last year. Now maybe there's a quarterback upgrade and now he gets the 2nd year in this coaching system with Zach Robinson as his offensive coordinator. Now the offensive line should be like a middle of the pack unit. Last year they came into the year as like a top 10 unit, but now they're going to lose their center Drew Dahlman, who he's good at some stuff, not great at other stuff. They don't add anybody in terms of like offensive line play and free agency. In the draft, their only offensive piece was a 7th round tackle in Jack Nelson. So like this team, for the most part, is just rinse and repeat. Like you look at the offensive personnel outside of Drew Dahlman at center, and obviously now Michael Penix instead of Kirk Cousins, everything from the backfield to the wide receiver depth chart to the tight ends, the offensive line for the most part, it's all the same, which is good news for Bijan Robinson because the final 12 games last year with the exact same offense and same coaching staff, he was the RB1 in fantasy. Now I look at this and I see where can the concerns come in for Bijan. The one concern could be that he has a legit running back in his backfield in Tyler Algier, who was a late round rookie a couple of years back, had over 1,000 yards rushing and set the rookie record for the Falcons. This is a good running back who, as recent as last year in a game with Bijan Robinson, put up 100 plus yards and a touchdown and outproduced Bijan in that same game. Like guys like Saquon Barkley don't have to worry about Will Shipley in the same backfield seeing 15 touches and putting up 100 plus yards, right? That's just never going to happen if Saquon's healthy. But literally last year, multiple times, that happened with Tyler Algier out there seeing a dozen or so touches. The other concern would be that if Michael Penix is just not that that dude that we saw the final 3 weeks last year where he can create these big offensive outputs, right? He did it in games that were against bad defenses. He did it in games where those defenses didn't have a lot of tape to go off of from him, and now NFL teams have a whole offseason and 3 games of tape. So that is where my concerns would come in if we're talking about like comparing him to number 1 overall pick Saquon. But other than that, like it's kind of a bulletproof profile, and this is exactly what right now, if we pull up the rushing stats this year, rushing projections on DraftKings Sportsbook, they currently have Bijan Robinson projected for 1,200 rushing yards, one of the highest numbers you're going to see, top 3 in the NFL. 1,200 rushing yards. It doesn't factor in his receiving yards, which are set in the 400s. Like, they're expecting Bijan Robinson's baseline this year to be 1,500 to 1,600 total yards. Yeah, you can feel confident and quote unquote bet your house on this dude this year. You obviously know where he goes in fantasy drafts. He is going early. He's going as a top 3 pick on average in fantasy. This is kind of how I have it right now, as like a top 2 or 3 pick. Saquon Barkley I prefer slightly right now, but if you're sitting in a spot where you're the 4th pick, even the 3rd pick or the 5th pick, it shouldn't be a conversation of is it Bijan or Jameer, is it Bijan or CeeDee Lamb? You just take Bijan Robinson and you don't look back. So these are 5 running backs that I would quote bet my house on this year because they just check all the boxes, and some of them are being massively undervalued. But this is just a strategy for the running back position. If you want an overarching strategy for every single round of your fantasy draft, well, you can check out this video right here, the number 1 draft strategy for 2025. This is going to help you so much. Make sure you click this video because your league mates probably won't.